Welcome to Alabama Manufacturing Now, hosted by Alabama Technology Network, a podcast where we cover a wide array of challenges, solutions, and innovations for manufacturers. We're your host, Whitney Barlow,
Supplier Development Manager.
And I'm Paige Caulfield, Marketing and PR Manager. Hey everybody, welcome. In today's episode, we will be talking about ATN and our role in the state of Alabama. In today's episode, we have Joey Massey, ATN's MEP Director. Joey, it's so wonderful to have you here. Tell us, what is your role with ATN?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My main role is to interface with MEP, which is a federal entity. I have other roles that go along with that, but the main thing is to make sure we adhere to the criteria we're supposed to for the federal award, be responsible for reporting elements, that sort of thing, and generally adhere to guidelines.
So what is ATN? Like, what does it stand for?
ATN, the Alabama Technology Network, provides training and technical assistance all throughout the state. We provide that in several different areas: environmental safety and health, leadership management development, continual improvement, quality systems, that sort of thing, and industrial maintenance. We have on-staff experts in each of those areas, and more recently, we have food industry classes that we've started to do, and we also offer, recently, supply chain information services. Those aren't fleshed out fully, but they're growing.
So Paige, Joey just talked about the fact that we had subject matter experts, and we talked about how many years of experience they had a couple of days ago. What was that number? I can't remember.
Yeah, so we actually just recently calculated that, and we have over 1,000 years of manufacturing workforce experience with our field staff. It's on up there. It's quite excellent. But Joey, let me get this straight. So we talked a little bit about your job title when we introduced you, and I said the word MEP. What is MEP? What does it stand for?
MEP stands for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Okay. It's a division of the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, known to us as NIST. What it is a public-private partnership. The organization themselves partners with sometimes other government organizations, such as we are in the state of Alabama. It could be a completely private organization that they partner with, 501c3s, nonprofits, that sort of thing. But what they do is they focus on small to medium manufacturers in the United States, and there's an MEP affiliate known to them as a center in every state and in Puerto Rico as well. So there are 51 total.
Okay, and how are these centers beneficial to manufacturing?
So you have access to a vast network of things. So just in Alabama alone, we are required to work with the small to medium manufacturers. That's normally an underserved demographic in manufacturing. For training, they don't always get the recognition, so we work with them. That happens in every state. So in all states, when you roll that up cumulatively, you get a benefit to all manufacturers of that size for MEP. Past that, there's a requirement. There are many criteria that go along with being an MEP affiliated center, but one of the requirements is that you need to capture data and create impacts for these companies. So when you do that, you get that cumulative benefit, and that can be a tough job, and that data ranges anywhere from number of jobs created, jobs retained, cost savings, cost avoidance, investment amounts of dollars. The goal there is to help them create these impacts that are more than their original investment. That's what the real goal is. That's where the main benefit comes in. And that, like I say, that can be a tough job, but what you always have to do is remember that you're just trying to affect the overall economy, and at that point, it all becomes worth it. We've had studies done ourselves, and so have other MEP centers around the country. And the studies say that for every dollar invested total, that we usually bring between $4 and $6 of return for that money. So I'm very proud of
Good
that.
return. Yeah, that's a great return.
So do you feel like the companies, when they really see the difference being made in the training, do you see that impact when how do you get that impact? Like, how do you figure that out with the company?
Well, it depends really on what the service is that you're going to provide. For example, safety services, those are generally regulated by the government. There's a regulatory piece to that puzzle. There are fines that are associated with that through OSHA. So those are avoidance amounts you can know. For other type projects that may not be so cut and dry, there's always, workforce investment time. How much did you pay an employee while they were in this training? What did it cost you in payroll and benefits for this employee to be trained in this area? Regardless of what that training is, there's always that piece of the puzzle. So there are formulas that you can go by. Now, sales are a little harder. You pretty much have to work with the company or a contact at the company to determine that information. And investments are pretty easy. Everyone generally knows how much money they spent. So it's, like I said, it's not the easiest task to come up with the information, but it's what we're required to do, and we do it. We do it well.
So the company wins, but also the employee does too, because they're getting some kind of training that makes them better overall.
Yes, absolutely.
There, as well as anywhere else that they choose to go. So it's a win-win. So in that, what resources does ATN offer these companies and these manufacturers throughout Alabama?
Oh, that's large. So specifically, we talked about the subject matter experts earlier. We have subject matter experts that I've now learned have over 1,000 years of experience. So we do environmental safety and health. These are in a team-centric model. We have an environmental safety and health team. They generally provide OSHA training, HAZWOPER training, rigging training, things of that nature. They also provide technical assistance in these areas. We do job hazard analyses. We do assessments. We provide assistance to write written safety programs, written environmental programs. That's mostly a good example of what we do in safety. As far as continual improvement, that includes almost every quality standard that's recognized in the United States, every ISO standard. There may be some new ones that come out for a time period that we don't have expertise in right then, but we generally go gain that. Lean training, Kaizen events, lean simulations. Boy, it's vast. For industrial maintenance, we have hydraulics trainings. We have drive systems trainings, almost any drive system you would find on a factory floor, PLC programming training, technical assistance in the way of 3D printing on occasion. We don't do a great deal of that. Blueprint reading and leadership management. There is always supervisory management training, change management. There's a lot of them. If you want a full list, I would recommend to go to atn.org, and you can find all of the classes there. As far as other benefits or other resources that we provide, we have access to innovation centers through the college system. We have access to sometimes federal labs through MEP. It's really a large amount of resources we can bring to bear in any given situation.
So if MEP's in federal network, that means, and there's one in every state, I guess technically we could have access to other states and be able to do collaborations and maybe...
We have the ability to do collaborations. Not only do we have the ability, we're encouraged to do that. We are measured, for lack of a better term, on a thing that MEP labels as National Network Citizenry, where you report what you've done in collaboration with other states and MEPs. We're organized into nodes, so obviously we're in the Southeast, and we work with those quite frequently. There's a lot of information that flows around in that regard. So if an MEP center comes up with some new product and they deliver it to some of their manufacturers, and they see over time that it's been successful and it's been helpful and it's been impactful, then they can report that up to MEP. I say report it up. It sounds troublesome, but it's really easy to do. And MEP will then distribute and say, Idaho has created XYZ service. It's worked really well for them. We would like for everyone else to do it. If you want to try it, here it is. And then they will just distribute that to you and you're free to use it. So it's a really good thing. There's a lot of information, and when we have all this expertise on staff, all the other states have like expertise. They don't all do the same service areas, but certainly they have lots of industry experience.
So meaning that, if we have a company in Alabama that's located throughout the country, we don't necessarily go train in the other parts of the states, but we can collaborate and contact, maybe like they have a company in Tennessee and they can
certainly
use the Tennessee MEP or the Georgia MEP or even the Idaho MEP, I guess, for that matter.
Yes, we do that regularly. We would contact the other state and say, hey, we have such company that wants this, that, or the other. They want us to do it. Do you offer that service? If they do, many times they will go ahead and perform it. That cuts down on travel costs, et cetera, et cetera. They will perform it, but all of them, like I said before, all of the states don't have the same subject matter. They don't even deal in the same fields. So if they don't do that, sometimes they will say, no, we understand. That's perfectly fine. You come deliver the training, and then we will go do that. We've gone as far as Utah. We've gone to Texas. It happens. It's rare that we go do that. Most of the time they have the resources to take care of that, but it does happen.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit. How long have you been with ATN?
This will be my 23rd year in April.
23 years. Wow, that's quite some time. So you've been in the manufacturing realm, I guess, for at least 23 years. In your opinion, what are some of the obstacles that Alabama manufacturers are facing currently?
That's a good question. In my opinion, I would say the main ones right now would be supply chain disruptions, and not because of lack of product necessarily, but some materials are just generally harder to come by. Almost all materials cost more than they did a few years ago. And when that happens, with a given amount of money, you are able to secure less supply for your needs. And then that means you have to turn your supply chain over quicker. So that can be a bit problematic. Otherwise, I would also say a labor shortage. There's everywhere in America right now, there's just not enough bodies to fill the manufacturing jobs. And even when there are enough bodies to fill the manufacturing jobs, in today's environment, manufacturers a lot of times need a certain skill set that their potential workforce pool may not have. So there's always the battle of trying to upskill those. Now there's a theoretical battle, I guess you would say, a perception issue that sometimes manufacturing jobs are dirty, hot, unsafe, noisy, and sometimes people just don't want to do that. So there's a battle of a perception of the situation as well as the others. There's a technology adaptation piece where, due to a labor shortage or due to whatever, that a company may need to implement a new technology to try to help offset that shortage, whether it's robotics or whatever. So the problem with that is many times when you need a specific technology to solve a specific problem, these problems can be very specific. The task that needs to be done can be very, very specific. And you may not know that technology exists. So there's a pretty large piece of research and development, of just research to even understand whether that's an available thing to you. And if it is, the investment is usually pretty large. So in that vein, some MEP centers in the country offer technology scouting services where they will do that for you to see if there's a technology already available that can help you with your problem. Now, as far as Alabama specifically goes, our clients are surveyed, and that is one of the questions. What are their major challenges right now? And Alabama specifically, the top three are cost savings, which kind of coincides with the supply chain situation since materials are costing more. The second one is employee recruitment, which is always going to be on the radar with the workforce situation the way it is. And thirdly is opportunities for growth. Now, I think opportunities for growth coincide with the other two. You don't have the employees to grow and you need money to grow. So I think, that's just a bit of an answer that's in congruence with the other two. I think they're really all tied together.
Okay. So we've been talking about training and providers, and I know that ATN's not the only provider, but what would... I know. Can you believe it?
It's a shock.
It was a shock to me. It was a massive shock. But when I'm thinking about training providers, there's public providers, there's private providers. But when we are coming into a company, maybe what a company said or what you think personally sets ATN apart, makes us kind of unique in providing the training.
I can do that. So the first thing I would say is we are not out here to just provide as much training as we can possibly provide. That's not why we're here. What we're here to do is to provide the correct training for the correct situation that brings the most impact to the client. That we need to hit all three of those criteria for the training to be what we want it to be. So that being said, we always follow up. If we implement a new process, if we help a company implement a brand new process that they've never done before, or if we change a process to make it more efficient that they implement, that they've just not done it that way, we always follow up to see how that's going, how that's gone, how's that working, is there anything else that needs to be done to improve that? So when you do that time and again, time and again, and you follow up, what you actually do is create relationships with the clients and the representatives of the clients, the individuals that work at that company, and they typically enjoy the work. Our average satisfaction score is 8.7 out of 10, and they come back. So 70% of our business is with companies we've worked with before because we create those relationships, and we're not just out there to do all we can do. We're out there to do the best we can do in whatever amount that is. I think that's the main thing that sets us apart.
Yeah, I know on our LMD stuff that we do, when we set up a contract with that, we do a series, like we've done a series that's gone for a year where we meet monthly and do 4 to 6 hour training, and each one of those build onto the next one so that when the client, the company is done and their employees have finished the training, they have multiple certificates, but they also have almost basically been through a year-long leadership course. And which I think is really helpful for both the company and the employee on both aspects. And I've been in some companies before where we've been doing audits, which I thought was really interesting because you don't ever think about that. You need to you think about auditing for, the time of the year. It's tax years. I mean, it's always time for taxes. I feel like we're in perpetual tax and perpetual elections. But when you're doing audits, I think that's a really cool thing that we offer because it lets you kind of evaluate where you are and then what kind of training do you really need.
Yeah, that's very important to us. That when we always have to try to consider what the situation is that we're trying to work with. There's some that are easy. If it's a regulatory training that you require annually, well, you don't really need to know the situation for that. You just perform the training and that happens, but that's not the case for most of our work.
So does ATN, does it capture the impacts? And if so, how often? And how accurate are they?
We don't capture the impacts. That would be, that could skew the impacts. So the impacts are captured by a third-party survey house. MEP contracts with a third party who has no interest in anything whatsoever. So there's no conflict, and they contact the clients after the fact. Did you ask when that happened? I think you did.
I did.
It's typically, we perform a project, we complete a project, we report that we've completed a project to MEP. Then if that is brand new, it can take 6 months or so to a year, And usually the maximum time is 18 months, but it's usually around a year. So after a year after the project, this is one of the reasons we follow up every time. A year after the project, we revisit that and we re-talk to them about what has happened since then. And we go over that, and then they're contacted by a third party. It's mostly digital these days. It used to be done by phone back in the 1920s when I got here. But it's usually web-based. It's always web-based now. And they send that out to the client. Then the client answers. We have no part in that.
Okay. All right. One more question, and I'll turn it back over to Whitney. But you talked a little bit earlier about surveys. ATN is requesting the information for the survey. Do we contact the companies?
No,
We do not contact.
we do not contact the companies. Well, we do contact the companies, but not with the survey. We know they're going to be surveyed. We know when they're up to be surveyed, and we will contact them and say, hey, you are going to be surveyed. Will you please take
Okay.
the time to do it?
How important are those surveys to be completed?
They're super important. In my world especially, I had said earlier, one of our main goals is to be as impactful as possible. So we collect some information in that regard, but we can't collect the information that way. So it's very important to us that the client complete those surveys and complete them as accurately as possible, to your point, so that we know what actually happened. I mean, we don't want underreported numbers. We don't want overreported numbers. We want the accurate number that they believe they have achieved. That lets us know how we actually did. So that happens once per quarter. There's surveys happen once per quarter, and we're told, like I said, who is going to be surveyed. Then we contact them and say, hey, you are going to be surveyed. Will you please fill it out? But we do not supply them the survey. We're not with them when they answer the survey. They do that on their own.
Gotcha.
So with the surveys, that made me think about in the classes and the uniqueness of our training. I'm sure if there's someone listening right now that's maybe never used ATN, they're probably thinking, well, yeah, y'all are great, but I'm sure you're like $6,000 an hour. But we're not.
No, we're not.
And more importantly, there's some cost-saving things that they can do as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those kind of things?
Well, that's another small advantage we have. MEP is a funding source for us. So when you become the affiliate center in your state, you are issued some funding that's based on the number of manufacturers that are in your state that the federal government recognizes. That number varies, obviously. Companies start, companies stop, things shut down. But once you receive that, then your goal is to work with small or medium-sized manufacturers. And to do that, you use that to offset some of the cost that is associated with doing that. So it's really a subsidization more than anything.
And on top of that, there's grant funding mechanisms that they can use that are available through the same resources that exist for other providers.
Sure.
Training providers, I guess I should clarify that. And so Alabama Technology Network is a training provider, and we used to be on our own on an island, but then we are now a part of the Alabama Community College system. And they are their own version of providing. They're a little bit different than us in what they provide, but
Sure.
we do a lot of collaboration together. Can you tell, maybe give an instance of how we collaborate or explain how that kind of works?
I think I can do that, yes. So the community colleges themselves, ATN, we're upskilling employees. That's one of our main goals, is to upskill potential employees. So we are all about workforce. Well, when the community colleges came together as the community college system, what that actually was a merger of trade and technical schools that existed in Alabama. That's been a long time now since that's happened. I don't know that those were private, what their state associations were, but they weren't under the State Board of Education at the time. I know that. So those merged to come together. Well, that's all workforce related. Every trade or technical school is really preparing the workforce. That's what their goal is. So there's always been a component of preparing the workforce for the college system. And even now, outside of any of their 4-credit classes or their degree programs, they have technical parts of their programs that, welding certificates, things of that nature. But also, they all have, I believe they all have, I could be wrong about that, but if not all, certainly most of the community colleges in Alabama have a workforce office, a department, a workforce department. I want to say a workforce development office, but that's not what it is necessarily. Some are called that, I think, but they can be called different things. At any rate, they have staff whose job it is to know the industries in their areas, and the community colleges are pretty regional. So they have pretty good relationships with those companies in their region, and we collaborate with them if they have resources. If a company comes to them with the need, or they talk to a company and the company tells them what they need, they either have the resources to do that or they don't. And typically, if they don't, they will contact us and say, I have a company who needs this training. Do you have the resources to provide that? And 99% of the time we do. And if we happen to not, we can find someone who does. Reciprocal to that, sometimes they have specific teaching needs that they may not have a person on staff who's necessarily qualified to teach that class. And then we will reciprocate, and we have taught 4-credit classes. Some of our employees have taught 4-credit classes for colleges on several occasions. So it's really a good relationship. I find it beneficial all around to them and us.
Yeah, I think so. I think in some areas of our state, there has been a tremendous success in the collaboration of ATN and the community college workforce. I agree with you. Some of them are called workforce officers, when some of them are called workforce development officers. And when you see them working together, you see the company really benefiting all the way around the block, from CDL training to LMD and everything in between. It's like a one-stop shop, which is pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very good. It's a very good relationship.
So we've talked about ATN and all the things it can do. And I know I've been not with ATN for 23 years, but I've been much shorter period of time. But just in my short tenure here, I have already seen tremendous success stories with companies and the benefit that they have with ATN training. Do you have any that you really like that just hits home with you? I can think of a couple myself, but I was just wondering what you have.
Well, since I've been here so long, there was a time period. There was a time period where I was actually a delivery person or helped deliver.
Really? I didn't know that either.
It's all coming out. It's all coming out here on the
I've not been here 23 years either, but I definitely did not know that.
Yeah. So,
What'd you deliver?
well, I didn't deliver anything specifically. What I always did was I would jump around with whomever was going to deliver to assist with their data needs or whatever they needed. So most of the time that was in conjunction with the safety team. It wasn't called the safety team at that point. It doesn't matter what it was called, but there was a company who thought, and they were correct in their theory, that their employees' perception of their safety programs was, let's see, how should I put that? Less than desirable. of all their safety training and all the requirements that they had to do. They thought it was less than desirable. Now, this was a large company. I won't call their name, but it was large. Almost 1,000 employees. So they contacted us and wanted to perform their own survey of what their perception of the safety program was. And we agreed to do that. So we took all those, and I compiled that data, and I analyzed that data and wrote a report. Actually 2, but that's more to the story. Wrote a report that was the equivalent of a 70-page book. But thankfully, they took that and they followed up, and they created training to explain to everybody why and what happens and all that. And they were very successful at changing their employees' perception of that. And I thought that was great. And the reason I know that is because we redid the survey 2 years later to ensure that they had actually changed their employees' perception of it. And it was an improvement. So it was fun for me. I enjoyed it. I was glad to do that.
One of my favorite success stories isn't even something that I taught. It was actually in the continual improvement realm. It's a company in South Alabama. They were shopping loans to expand their building, because they felt like they had outgrown their space.
Sure.
And some of our star instructors went down there and did a lean and a Kaizen, I think. I know they did a lean. I'm pretty sure they did a Kaizen. And after they got done restructuring and doing the audit and moving all of the equipment around, they expanded and basically the building L'd off, and the back side of the L completely was empty. So they had the ability not only to expand, but they had the space to add in more capacity.
Sure.
And that company owner was beyond thrilled because, number one, it saved them money, a ton of money. Number two, it made them money because they could go out and fill their capacity with some more. I think that company actually did some third-party contracting with what they were doing and still have the ability to grow still. And I thought, that's really impressive. I need them to come do my house. But that's really impressive that they were able to give that space to that company just by going in and just restructuring and thinking through that process. So even if you don't think, well, our company really doesn't need lean, our company doesn't need Kaizen, when they walk through it, it is amazing. I think a lot of our instructors actually have done that to their house.
Probably.
Which is funny to me.
Or at least their office.
Yeah, I feel.
I know of specific employees who label their kitchen drawers with what they contain.
I mean,
that's true.
What we should do is after the podcast, put them on Instagram as influencers of how to organize things. But I thought that was such a tremendous success story. There's another company also in South Alabama. I don't know why mine are always in South Alabama.
I think I know the company you're talking about.
That did they had some leadership issues, and they really didn't have leadership issues. They just had some, kind of like yours, a perception.
Sure.
They had some perception issues with their employees. So they took on a leadership classes that lasted for about 18 months, and they surveyed them in the beginning of what was their perception, and they surveyed them at the end of what their perception was of each other. And, leadership is not like lean. It is much more soft, and it is much more theoretical, but you grow in that time together, and you begin to share things with each other. And it was interesting. I helped teach that class. It was interesting to watch them grow with each other. The company came back afterwards and said it was tremendous, the improvement that it made to those sitting in the room, but also, which is what you really want to hear, when they went back and planted those acorns with their employees on their lines and tried to have that. So I thought that was a really good success story as well. Do you have any?
Well, I mean, in my position now, I see pretty much all of the success stories that are written. So while I don't really have favorites of those, I have two favorite categories of those. And you alluded to one, which is the process improvement ones, where they make it much more efficient and either clear up space or we combine steps in a process and let the space it takes be less and it be much quicker so that they can expand or have a new line. I love those. The other ones I love are the obviously the saving ones, where there's a company who may not be able to make payroll and you help them become efficient enough that they save enough money that you do that. Now, those are pretty rare, where a company says, hey, we would have closed if this had not happened. But I love those. But to be honest, probably my favorite success story is always the next one.
Oh,
that's a good one, Jerry.
That's,
Thank you.
Close it, lock it down, we're done. Let's end on that one.
So on the, have you seen on success stories, have you seen where you were able to connect? So one manufacturer to another, like, for example, let's just say we're making these fantastic Rubik's Cubes right here, and these are being made in Huntsville.
Right.
And there's a component of this Rubik's Cube that's maybe being sourced somewhere else.
Right.
Outside of this state, maybe outside this country.
Sure.
And there is an opportunity, because we are all over the state of Alabama at any given time. I would imagine our 50-something employees are scattered from Huntsville to Mobile today, and from Tuscaloosa to Auburn and everything in between.
They're everywhere.
Teaching or giving in any given moment. So that, have you seen that where we were able to maybe say, oh, well, you need this widget for this component here on this Connects Rubik's Cube. I know someone in Headland, Alabama that makes that component. Let's see if we can connect you together. Have you seen? I've seen some hints of that in some of my stuff I've done in teaching, where you were able to connect to people. I didn't know if you ever saw any of those.
That's a great question. It happens from time to time. I can't give you a specific example right now, although I hope to see more of those in the near future. It's mostly anecdotal, like you say. That's not, when we get a success story, when we get an official success story, we have conducted a project work with a client. We've conducted that. So that's kind of what I mean by they're anecdotal. When that happens, someone talks to someone, you say, hey, I know someone in Headland, Alabama who does that. So we don't necessarily facilitate that to be able to get the official success story. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but we can make we have made the connections before.
Oh, we absolutely have made connections like that, and I hope to make many more in the future to be able to actually capture those. But yes, that has happened. It does happen.
In our terms, we call it supplier scouting, right? Kind of.
That's one term we use for it. That's typically an older term, but yes, supplier scouting.
So it's something that we could offer, though, our companies is the resource to be able to help them identify through various mechanisms that we offer at ATN, that if they need not just training, but if they need resources for supplies or products being made.
Absolutely. I mean, we're trying to paint a picture of the supply situation in the state of Alabama. Our goal is to paint a complete picture of the supply situation in the state of Alabama. Also a tough job. Seems very ambitious, but I'm up for the task. At least I believe I am.
But you think, so that's really cool. I was trying to think of some more success stories. Have you ever, what's your favorite page? Have you got one? Like you both said y'all see them all. So which one might have stood out to you?
All. And there's one very similar in Troy, very small manufacturer. And they were having some space issues. And we came in, some of our star instructors came in and really held their hand, per se, and moved some stuff around. And they were able to grow. And they basically have not spent any money yet. They were able to get some funding. And we continue to help this company on an annual basis come in and be able to, we've provided some continual improvement. We've provided leadership classes for them. So it is very much a partnership with this company now.
Which is really kind of cool. And when you become like their, second or third arm of their company and being able to go in and help them, and you're their first call when they
It
have
happens
a
a lot
problem.
when they have any problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whether it's technical or not, a lot of times we're their first call.
I have noticed that too with some of our employees. When the field staff goes out, they talk about the fact, well, so-and-so called me and they have this question. Or when they're doing the audits, they have, they're there to audit maybe safety or environmental issues there. And they end up in a whole nother realm before it's over with, because in that you're sitting in those rooms, those audits are like, 2-3 day long, and they're in there for 8 hours a day in a boardroom. So you eventually get to the point, and if y'all ever seen them, they're like Excel spreadsheets, and they're a whole very in-depth process. I was privy to one the other day, and I was like, man, that's an intense process for 3 days.
It's a lot. It is. I'm going to ask, either one of you can answer. We talked a little bit about our instructors having over 1,000 years of manufacturing workforce experience, but what is so different about our instructors? Like, what makes them rock stars? Why are they so special? I know, Whitney, you've been out in the field. You can attest to that.
Yeah, tell us, Whitney.
Joey, you once delivered back in 1910.
I was certainly not a star. I was anything but a star.
I think what makes our instructors so great is they come from manufacturing, or they come from a field they're not all, like the LMD instructors aren't all coming from manufacturing, but just about every single one of them have come from, they worked in that capacity. Our safety people, they were maybe head safety guys at a manufacturing facility. Our continual improvement, they did some form of that in manufacturing, and most of them come with multiple years experience. They were plant managers, they were safety managers, the ones that do an LMD, a lot of them taught actual professional development for both Fortune 500 companies as well as manufacturing companies. So you come with this extensive, not just, here's the book, I'm going to teach you about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
They can turn around and say, well, this one time there was this incident where I had to do X, Y, and Z, B, C, and D, and, maybe it potentially fired somebody, or that's as unfortunate as that is. And then you have the, I don't know, I think that's really the cool thing is when I was doing the shadowing with LMD, we had a guy, one of my guys I shadowed, he was a former plant manager of a couple of different companies. And to hear his stories and the real life experiences of how he applied what he was teaching, and to see the people's faces of like, oh, well, he gets it. Like, he gets what I'm going through.
Sure.
Right.
He gets the headache. They don't want to be here. They don't want to come to work. How do I, push through that? How do I find that motivation in those employees? How do I make good employees better? And when you're hearing that from somebody that has 20 years experience dealing with it, I think it just hits home better.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the aspect of manufacturing that's like almost anything else. I alluded earlier to there are certain skill sets that certain manufacturers require, but there's a base skill set that almost all manufacturers require. And in the same regard, when you work in a manufacturing facility, which even I came from a manufacturing facility.
In 1910.
Yes, in 1910, we were starting
dinosaur.
Ford Motor Company. We were building brand new cars. No, anyway, so when you work in a manufacturing facility, there are certain aspects of whatever you manufacture. The one I worked in manufactured apparel, but the lines move. You start with the raw material, the lines move. You see how all that moves, so you understand how a manufacturing facility works. Maybe not the exact specifics of the one you're in right then, but you have a base understanding of something about almost every one of them. So there's always that aspect of it, and we do well at that.
Yeah.
We do well at going in. We do tours as well.
We do tours. We do celebrate Manufacturing Day, which ATN kind of turns it into an all month long situation because there's no better way. And in the past, we've contacted some of our local partners and some of our clients, and we go in there and we walk the plant floors, and we like to get close to our clients and see what makes them work, makes them tick.
On that note, Joey, we're going to do a manufacturing matchmaker event during the month of, it's October, right? I haven't just pulled that.
That's right. October.
And so we're going to try to, we'll probably have to get that all out in the early part of the summer to start identifying. And it is kind of along this concept of you've got items that you potentially want to source closer to home for transportation cost and supply chain cost, or you need resources in that capacity. We focus so much on workforce, we forget that that's only one component.
Right.
You can have all the workforce you need, but if you don't have the supply chain,
Right.
That's also another component. So we're going to try to do some matchmaking.
See if we can help you, Alabama manufacturers.
I think that's great.
Matchmaking. Too bad October isn't an M. That would be fantastic if
MM.
manufacturing.
Well, Joey,
matchmaking.
we appreciate you being here with us today, and all your experience and knowledge that you've provided.
Thank you. I was happy to do it. I enjoyed it.
You got anything else you want to add about ATN, Alabama Technology Network, MEP?
No, we've almost covered the gamut, I think.
Almost.
Almost.
Is there anything we've left
Anything
on the table?
Maybe we did cover the gamut.
Because if we've left it on the table, we need to take it back up right now. But it's but we're now okay. So most often, just in case someone comes looking for us, we have a website and we have all that you'll have access to. But where are we housed?
Where are we housed? Our main corporate office is in Montgomery.
And we're not all 53 of us or 54, ever have any
Absolutely
there
not.
is
We're
55
and counting.
of us. Where are we?
We're located at community colleges around the state.
So if you're looking for us, you can probably check your local community college. There's an office there.
Someone at your local community college will know about it, whether we have a specific satellite office there or not. There's a good chance we do have one there in some capacity, but someone will be able to put you in contact with us, or you can contact the number on the website. We will be glad to put you in contact with someone.
All right. Thanks again, Joey, for being on here. And thanks for watching and listening to Alabama Manufacturing Now. Please like us, subscribe, and follow on all podcast platforms.
Thank you. We'll see you next episode, guys.